What is the best love story you've ever seen? Edward and Bella? Adam and Eve? Jack and Rose? If you said any of these three, you're wrong. Sorry. And if you said Adam and Eve, why? The correct answer, though, is actually Katniss and Primrose Everdeen from the Hunger Games. Their bond is written so elegantly that it's one of those stories that you just keep on seeing over and over again in everything else that you watch from that point on. You see echoes of it in every other story about sisters, about siblings, about people who love each other in general, people who protect each other. There are so many characters like this, ones that I've all grouped up under the very affectionate name of being guard dog characters. From Katniss Everdeen to John Marston to Dale Cooper, there's a plethora of them across every type of media. In fact, there's so many that I cut about a dozen from this list simply because they're talked about too much already. So, of course, feel free to tell me which ones I should have included in the comments. But whether it's someone like Joel Miller, or Emma Swan, Elite Ball reference, or Claire Redfield, all of them say the exact same thing. If you're worth loving, you're worth keeping safe. But isn't that obvious? What sets all of these characters apart from someone like Edward Cullen? To explain this, let's start with the classics. Katniss Everdeen was my introduction to this trope. I don't think I'm an exception in that experience. I watched the movies with my sisters in a hotel room when I was maybe 10 and didn't really pay attention to much. But that scene, the one where she volunteers for the Hunger Games, for her sister Primrose, it stuck with me even then. And then, again, even more when I read the books during quarantine. Leee Everett from The Walking Dead game, for some reason, reminds me a lot of her. Maybe because I got exposed to that game way too young, as my older sister and her friends played it, and I squealed over every individual zombie. But even for his introduction as a convict, there's something so stable about him. It's a question quickly answered when Clementine enters the picture, a little girl he ends up taking care of during a zombie apocalypse, as they travel with another group of survivors. Both Katniss and Leee end up throwing themselves in mortal danger for the sake of these little kids, neither of which are particularly successful at it, spoiler alert, with death plaguing both Primrose and Leee. Clementine is actually the one to shoot him, to keep him from turning into a zombie himself. Leee and Katniss fight so hard to keep these little kids safe, to the point where their whole identities start revolving around protecting them across their respective stories. When they fail, it's the end of them. It's the end of them as we know it. We see Katniss lose herself in grief and self-loathing from the day she assassinated Coin to living in Victor's village after everything. The story ends not long after, and her resolution is becoming a mother. And normally, I hate this, but to get a little tangential here, I think her transitioning from devoting her life to protecting Primrose from the horrors of life as they knew it, to finding a new life and safely raising her own kids after a revolution is a fairly satisfying ending. One that, unfortunately, Leee Everett doesn't get. He dies in an abandoned jewelry store, and Clementine is usually the one to do it. She has to move on without him at her tiny age, and she goes on to take in a baby under her own care. But Lee's death and Katniss's hopeful survival isn't why I paired them together. I instead put them together because they both set up this legacy of protecting children. Katniss volunteers to get her sister out of the Hunger Games and ends up putting an end to them entirely. Lee's love for Clementine is what inspires her to take care of Alvin Jr. when she was still so young. The reason Lee's and Katniss's decisions were so enduring was because of their circumstances. Leee was a black man in the post-apocalypse deep South in America. Katniss was a girl in poverty in District 12, the head of her house in her teens. Despite how vulnerable both of them are, they still strive to keep even more vulnerable people safe. Clementine and Primrose. They devote themselves toward this work so intensely that it affects their core identities. Leee goes from being a criminal to being a father figure. Katniss sees herself as a big sister, not the Mockingjay or the girl on fire. Everything she does is for Prim. Their protective nature brings out their absolute best. In Lee's case, it may have also killed him, but he dies being remembered as a dear father figure who meant well, instead of a killer on the way to jail. With Katniss, she inspires hope in all of the other districts by showing them the one thing they all have in common, loving their family. Even the Capitol is endeared by it. even President Snow is. However, you can tell that both Leee and Katniss, despite what others might say, are fundamentally good people. So many other characters in both stories aspire to be like them, whether it's Clementine, Finnick, or Haymitch. The richness of their character comes from how willing they are to skew their own morals to keep their loved ones safe, and they're not the only ones to do that. Dale Cooper from Twin Peaks and John Marston from the Red Dead Redemption duology being paired together is a bit of an out-of-left-field choice, but I swear they have more in common than you'd expect. Even if the beginnings to their stories are pretty much polar opposites. John Marston starts out as an orphan forced to turn to crime and then taken into an outlaw gang when he was in his teens and groomed into being a thief. Dale Cooper was a Boy Scout who kept an audio diary, who defended his best friend from a bike robbery. However, both end up beginning their true adulthood being haunted by mistakes. This one big mistake that ends up dooming them. John, after his closest friend gives up his life to help him and his family escape from his criminal gang, goes and hunts down one of the final members to avenge this late friend. And it leads to the police hunting John down, imprisoning his family and later killing him. Dale Cooper has an affair with his partner's wife, which sparks this years-long resentment from the partner to Dale, which leads to said partner leading Cooper into the Black Lodge, aka Hell, where Cooper is trapped for pretty much the rest of his life, save for a momentary escape. In between their backstories and their fates, they devote much of their time to protecting those around them. In the prequel game, John navigates his own identity crisis as he rethinks his loyalty to his father figure and steps up as a literal father to his child and wife. Then in the first game, he ends up being strong-armed into being a bounty hunter to protect his family. Dale devotes his own life to being an FBI agent, becoming a very high-caliber one at that. In Twin Peaks, we see him protecting pretty much the entire town. In Season 2 even, a few of the offshoot villains actually refer to him as this very intimidating force of good and justice in the town. And the central victim of the show, Laura Palmer, is led to her salvation with Cooper's hand on her shoulder. What's most striking about both Twin Peaks and Red Dead Redemption is their conversation around morals and the law. Red Dead is a little more on the nose about this since it's the center theme. John is used by a private police force to hunt down his former brothers in arms, and then he is killed off himself despite doing everything that he was told and being promised that he'd be safe. Because, after all, he was still a murderer. A mass murderer, in fact. Isn't it what he deserves? Twin Peaks, on the other hand, isn't as obvious with this conversation, partly since morals versus laws takes kind of a backseat to the more metaphysical, spiritual tones of the show. However, Season 1 still carries the topic really well. Cooper is immediately admired by a high school girl he meets early on, a girl named Audrey Horne. She very obviously has a crush on him and does very, very stupid things to get his attention. Despite the fact that she's 18 and technically legal, he still refrains from doing anything romantic with her. She pushes him quite a bit, but he insists to remain her friend since she is a very lonely girl that really needs one. Then, when she makes her own undercover attempt at One-Eyed Jack's, a brothel, he swoops in and saves her, even though it almost costs him his job for not following the proper protocol. Agent Cooper also gives Leland Palmer, Laura's father, abuser, and killer, mercy after he's arrested, listening to Leland's story about being taken advantage of and possessed by an old spirit that forced him to hunt and kill Laura, his daughter. It's very hard to sympathize with a man like Leland, but Dale manages, guiding him in his final moments to have a peaceful death. Cooper's a very obvious symbol of protection. He's an FBI agent, and John Marston is an outlaw. However, John Marston also toys around with the conversation of ethics and laws, obviously. He's the peak of the good man who does bad things stereotype. My favorite way the writers carry this out is in the first game with the strange man side plot. Basically, John meets this really weird guy in a very nice suit and a top hat because it's 1911, who acts really cryptic and judgmental over John despite them never having met before. Supposedly. The strange man sends him on his way multiple times with a choice of morals. He can go and find this drunk man in town about to cheat on his wife and talk him out of it to send him home, or let him cheat and rob him. Then the strange man is surprised when, if John respects the sanctity of marriage by talking this drunk man down, but can't seem to follow any other laws. John can go find a nun that's going to be robbed while traveling with some precious religious artifacts and rob her himself or protect her. The strange man holds many things over John's head, from his past to casualties John's long since forgotten about, to his own family, but John remains steady. He stays focused on keeping his family safe, whether that's from outside dangers, poverty, the Pinkerton Detective Agency, or even himself. After all, the biggest threat to the Marston household is John Marston's past. Dale Cooper works in a similar way. He protects Audrey Horne by holding himself back from her. He rushes into the Black Lodge to save his girlfriend, Annie Blackburn, from the man using her as a way to punish Cooper. Sometimes protection means distancing yourself from loved ones so they don't get hurt. Another video game series works with this concept actually quite perfectly. Ada Wong and Claire Redfield from Resident Evil are two sides of the very same coin, as much as people don't want to admit it. Both of them are guard dogs. Admittedly, they follow through on this in very different ways. Claire's much more proud to show how protective she is of her loved ones, and it's backed up by her actions, too. We're introduced to her as she makes her way into a blocked-off city, overrun by zombies, to check on her brother. Her older brother, who's not only a trained police officer, but a special agent and one of the best in the city. Claire still runs in to save the day and track him down, because apparently he needs it. And then, instead of finding her brother, she finds this little girl, Sherry Birkin, and doesn't even hesitate to take her under her wing too, because why not? Sherry will be infected, Sherry's mother will be trying to kill Claire, and Chris will be nowhere in sight, but Claire marches on. In the next game, she follows Chris's trail all the way to France to keep tracking him down. She's 19, by the way. And I cannot wait for the Code Veronica remake, oh my god. But anyways, Claire's personality pushes her elbow deep into the mess of protecting people. She goes to the sewers, garbage dumps, Land of the French, secret underground labs, and fights about a dozen different insane monsters along the way. Ada Wong, on the other hand, takes a much more distanced approach. She lies to Leon in Resident Evil 2, but still urges him to get away and get himself safe. She then fights off Mutz and the Tyrant for him. Then, in the fourth game, they meet again, and this time she's much more honest, even if still a little coy. He doesn't even notice all the times that she covers for him. She defies her boss in the name of keeping both Leon and Ashley safe, even with how irrelevant Ashley herself is to Ada. Then in the sixth game, she not only protects Leon and his partner Helena, but also saves Jake and Sherry, the children of two very famous enemies of hers, just for the sake of it. Even considering Ada's mixed intentions, she still guards those around her the best she can, even if it embarrasses and inconveniences herself to do it. Ada goes through a lot of inner conflict across her arc, but across the whole thing, she works similarly to a canine. Yes, she's trained for combat, but she can't help but soften at the affection and trust of others. Meanwhile, Claire's protection comes as second nature to her, like a sheepdog. Loyal, rough and tumble, and willing to get dirty. It's her duty to protect others, whether that's innocent and defenseless kids like Sherry, or her brother who's maybe 2 steps away from being Rambo. Claire and Ada are some of my favorite characters in this trope, but everyone within it, when all lumped together, show a very important core of outrighting love. So what happens when characters just don't have any? Annette Birkin is probably the best counterexample to both Ada Wong and Claire Redfield. She's Sherry Birkin's mother, and more importantly, one of the heads of Umbrella, the evil corporation making all of those bioweapon monsters, in Resident Evil 2, a game where both Ada and Claire confront her at different instances. She abandons Sherry to hide alone in a city decimated by zombies. She then leaves Sherry in a room surrounded by garbage, unconscious, and slowly succumbing to the virus she herself created, and then she lets her daughter watch her die. Out of everything that Annette does in the game, from creating the viruses that start the apocalypse to begin with, to shooting Ada Wong, the angriest reaction she sparks out of others is from Claire, when Annette refuses to go and help Sherry when the little kid's infected. Claire's left to do it herself. This is why Annette's character works so well. We see her genuine turmoil in the end, struggling with her decision of choosing violence over protection, and this is what ends up killing her. Narratively speaking. Out of any Resident Evil character, she should be the biggest protector out there, right? But she's not. In that way, she reminds me of Leland Palmer, Laura's father in Twin Peaks. Leland Palmer represents many of the same things that Annette does, but admittedly, his writers give him a lot more grace in the grand scheme of things. Annette is quickly forgotten about after her passing. Leland is kept as a propagation for a conduit of evil. He's a symbol, a metaphor, whereas Annette's simply a bad person. Both of them, though, are wolves in sheep's clothing, ones given away by their misdeeds towards children specifically. So is President Coin from the Hunger Games. However, where Leland Palmer and Annette, to some extent, represent the individual issue of abandoning and mistreating one's children as their guardian, President Coin represents the systemic side of the issue. She's hardly different from President Snow, the main villain of the trilogy. She also uses children for the sake of propaganda, political benefit, and war strategy. She also suggests keeping the Hunger Games going to instill fear in her political enemies. She throws away people who aren't needed. Meanwhile, Leland's evil is much more focused, specifically into his family. The only people who are wholly aware of it, at least at first, are his daughter and wife, and then his niece. He is a singular individual participating in an evil cycle that's been here for centuries. Where Leland's a cog, President Coin is the one trying to oil this machine. But their evil is also what makes the goodness of guard dog characters to be so powerful. Claire's protective streak shines brightest when she's picking up the pieces Annette left behind. Dale Cooper is there to protect the Palmer family and the entire town from the danger that is Leland Palmer and what controls him. Katniss volunteers herself into a lion's den to keep her sister from having to walk in herself. Meanwhile, President Coin immediately suggests repeating the cycle for a whole new batch of children. But the guard dog trope isn't just here to show us good versus evil, heroes versus villains. There are plenty of tropes and archetypes that already do that. What makes guard dogs so special is that instead they teach us about something much more important. Love is incredibly difficult to understand. It's frustrating and stressful and comforting. Writing it is even more intensely so. That's what makes it so hard. To write a passionate and rich relationship, you not only have to understand how relationships work, but how love itself does. After all, writing is just projecting your own ideas onto a story. It's a hard task for anyone, and there are a lot of examples of it done poorly, from booktop chick lit to thinly veiled jokes about familial neglect and comedy sitcoms like The Simpsons. But when it's done well, it really does sing. Guard dogs stand out in this way. The most important reason behind this is one I realized recently. A few years ago, to get a bit off topic, bear with me, I completely decided to quit romance in literature. No romance books, no romance subplots, not even pre-existing relationships. I had just grown so sick of this artificial push and pull that they all insist on. Instead of using narrative tension through outside circumstances, whether it's outside disapproval, danger from the world around them, or maybe long distances, or a growing rift between the two characters, or what have you, usually cis-het romances, always seem to rely on putting the woman at a disadvantage. The man is older, richer, more magical, smarter, more skilled, more stoic, and in control. Meanwhile, the woman is emotionally fraught, younger, she's new to the world, she's mundane, and in a lower income bracket. But sometimes she makes up for it in a spunky personality. Once I realized this, I couldn't help but notice it in other types of fictional relationships as well. Parent-child relationships where mistreatment is played up for laughs. Friends who betray and bully each other. Even relationships like neighbors, co-workers, mentors, and apprentices. For some reason, it's become so popular to be so hateful. Guard dogs, on the other hand, are a figure of protection. They're noticing how disadvantaged someone else is, and instead of swooping in to benefit, they guard them. Actions speak louder than words, and there is no amount of reading two characters that say, "I love you," that will match Katniss Everdeen volunteering for her sister in the Hunger Games, or the very heartbreaking goodbye between Leee Everett and Clementine. There is a very talented, world-renowned author that encompassed this concept very beautifully. Ursula K. Le Guin, in The Carrier Bag Theory of Fiction, describes this idea of humans' first invention not being a weapon for hunting, but instead a bag, or a basket, or a bowl. Something to carry, something to gather, something to distribute. It's a brilliant idea, and a wonderful question to answer. She sits you down, and she asks you, Is humanity a race built on violence or built on undeniable love for one another?